Alright, good morning everyone. We are here with the second half of break 363. It is the 21 Traders Case. And our team list for today: Broncos, Lee Marschall; Raiders, Ethen, Herangi; Bulldogs, Daryl, Barton; Sharks, Adnum; Titans, Byron, Scott; Manly, Sean Peter; Storm, William Goodger; Knights, Nicholas Verwey; Cowboys, William Goodger; Eels, Adnum; Panthers, Adnum; Rabbitohs, Daniel Bunt; Dragons, Nicholas Verwey; Roosters, Daniel Bunt; Warriors, Guy Turner; and Tigers, Nicholas Verwey. Right, here we are. We have our case ready to go. And just a reminder, we do have the chance to hit a Legends case card in the 21 Traders. So let's see what we have. So let's make sure the second one hasn't fallen down. And we have Ethen Lowe in the retirements. Number 2. Getting hard to show that one up today. There. There we are. Alright. Let's bring that chat and team list up. G'day Guy, welcome to the break, mate. Alright, let's go. Box number 1. G'day William. Good luck to you as well, mate. Rising Stars, Cooper Johns for the Storm. James Tedesco, parallel for the Roosters. Morning, Lee. Rising Stars, Charlie Staines for Panthers. Elliot Whitehead, parallel for the Raiders. Damien Cook, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Wildcard, Wade Graham for the Sharks. Mikhail Ravalawa, parallel for the Dragons. Rising Stars, Hayes Perham for the Warriors. Sharks, parallel checklist. Season to remember, Cameron McInnes for the Dragons. Chanel Harris Tavita, parallel for the Warriors. Jared Hargraves, parallel for the Roosters. Black Streeter, Renato Mulatalo for the Sharks. Corey Thompson, parallel for the Titans. Startoons, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Blake Brayley, parallel for the Sharks. Season to remember, Peter Hiku for the Warriors. Jordan McLean, parallel for the Cowboys. Wildcard, Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Dragons parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Herbie Farmworth for the Broncos. Cody Walker, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Valley Cherry Evans, parallel for Manly. Mitchell Barnett, parallel for the Knights. White Streeter, Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. Dunamis Luai, parallel for the Raiders. Billy Walters, season to remember for the Tigers. Peter Hiku, parallel for the Warriors. Club Heroes. Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Patrick Carrigan, parallel for the Broncos. Rising Stars, Tommy Talau for the Tigers. Katoni Staggs, parallel for the Broncos. Wildcard, Felice Kafusi for the Storm. Jerome Hughes, parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Freddie Lussick for the Roosters. Dylan Brown, parallel for the Eels. Startoons, Sean Johnson for the Sharks. Brett Morris, parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Semi Valemi for the Raiders. Latrell Mitchell, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Retirements, Ethen Lowe for the Rabbitohs. Parallel, Stephen Crichton for Panthers. Parallel Adam Clune for the Dragons. Season to remember, Big Papa for the Raiders. Chad Townsend, parallel for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Brendan Wakeham for the Bulldogs. Anthony Don, parallel for Titans. Valentine Holmes, parallel for the Cowboys. Season to remember, Josh Morris for the Roosters. Tigers, parallel checklist. Wildcard, Apsai Coruscant for the Panthers. Janela Paseka, parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Cade Cust for Manly. Kalen Ponga, parallel for the Knights. Cody Nikorima, White Street Art for the Warriors. Ryan Pappenhausen, parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Cade Ellis for the Dragons. Jake Averillo, parallel for the Bulldogs. Season to remember, Tavita Pangai Jr. for the Broncos. Clint Gutherson, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Connor Tracy for the Sharks. Panthers, parallel checklist. David Nofaluma, parallel for the Tigers. And our team wildcard for the Cowboys. Josh Jackson, parallel for the Bulldogs. And that is box number 1, done and dusted. Rising Stars, Tavita Funa for Manly. Radman Best, parallel for the Knights. Foil Authentics or Silver Authentics, no numbers on them. Daniel Saifiti for the Knights. Brendan Smith, parallel for Storm. Apsai Coruscant, Star Tunes for Panthers. Brian Kelly, parallel for Titans. Valentine Holmes, a season to remember for the Cowboys. Eels parallel checklist. Rising Stars, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Isaiah Yeo, parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Beau Fermor for the Titans. Jesse Bromwich, parallel for Storm. Luciano Alei-Alua, parallel for the Tigers. Wildcard, Mitchell Pearce for the Knights. Bulldogs, parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Asu Kapoa for the Tigers. Xavier Coates, parallel for the Broncos. Black Authentics, number 11. Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders, Ethen Herangi. Nice. And Big Papa parallel for the Raiders. Season to remember, Bradman Best for the Knights. Jazz Tavega parallel for the Warriors. Junior Paulo parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Nico Hines for the Storm. Angus Crichton parallel for the Roosters. Club Heroes, Ruben Garrick for Manly. Campbell Graham parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Adam Pompey for the Warriors. Paul Vaughan parallel for the Dragons. Season to remember, Suliasi Vunivalu for the Storm. William Kennedy parallel for the Sharks. Titans parallel checklist. Wildcard, Cody Nikarima for the Warriors. Dylan Edwards parallel for the Panthers. Rising Stars, Hammer for the Cowboys. Thanks, mate. Alex Twal parallel for the Tigers. White Street Art, Tucker Howie for the Roosters. Raymond Faitala Mariner parallel for the Bulldogs. Season to remember, Charlie Staines for Panthers. Jake Turpin, parallel for Broncos. Rising Stars, Oregon Kaufusi for the Eels. George Williams, parallel for the Raiders. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, parallel for the Warriors. Rising Stars, Keon Koloamatangi for the Rabbitohs. The Hammer, parallel for Cowboys. Wildcard in the team for Titans. Jake Friend, parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Kai O'Donnell for the Raiders. Adam Reynolds, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Jake Trbojevic, white street art for Manly. Ben Hunt, parallel for the Dragons. Curtis Sirenan, parallel for Manly. Star Tunes, Luke Brooks for the Tigers. David Clemmer, parallel for the Knights. Season to remember, Michael Jennings for the Eels. Aaron Woods, parallel for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Matt Dory for the Bulldogs. Ashley Taylor, parallel for the Titans. Black Street Art, Josh Mansour for the Panthers. Kyle Felt, parallel for the Cowboys. Season to remember, Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Lachlan Fitzgibbon, parallel for the Knights. Wildcard, Alex Glenn for the Broncos. Cade Cust, parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Tex Hoy for the Knights. Reece Robson, parallel for the Cowboys. Wildcard, Jason Tormalolo for the Cowboys. Brad Parker, parallel for Manly. And that is the end of another box. Season to remember, Ashley Taylor for the Titans, Damien Cook, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Latrell Mitchell, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Xavier Coates for Broncos. Mikhail Ravalawa, parallel for Dragons. Sharks, parallel checklist. Wildcard, Dylan Napa for the Bulldogs. Corey Thompson, parallel for the Titans. Rising Stars, Bailey Sirinen for the Rabbitohs. Jordan McLean, parallel for the Cowboys. Star Tunes, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Parallel, Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Wildcard, David Nofaluma for the Tigers. Adam Clune, parallel for the Dragons. And our white signature, number 108, Nick Meaney for the Bulldogs. Daly Cherry Evans, parallel for Manly. Renato Multalo, season to remember for the Sharks. Mitchell Barnett, parallel for the Knights. Rising Stars, Trayman Spry for the Titans. Jerome Hughes, parallel for Storm. Club Heroes, Cameron Smith for the Storm. Dylan Brown, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Mitchell Dunn for the Cowboys. Stephen Crichton, parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Jermaine Tanua Brown for the Warriors. Chad Townsend, parallel for the Sharks. Jake Averillo, season to remember for the Bulldogs. Tigers, parallel checklist. Jake Averillo, parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Dylan Brown for the Eels. Patrick Carrigan, parallel for the Broncos. Wildcard, Luke Keary for the Roosters. Elliot Whitehead, parallel for the Raiders. Season to remember, Cam Smith for Storm. Valentine Holmes, parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Bradman Best for the Knights. Tanila Paseka, parallel for Manly. Kalen Ponga, parallel for the Knights. Team Wildcard for the Broncos. Ryan Pappenhausen, parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Pawasa for the Roosters. King Gutho for the Eels. Rising Stars, Sean Blore for the Tigers. Herbie Farnworth, parallel for the Broncos. Knights, White Street Art, Mitchell Barnett. Panthers, parallel checklist. Season to remember, Tommy Turbo for Manly. David Nofaluma, parallel for Tigers. Chance Nicole Klokstad, parallel for the Raiders. Season to remember, Anari Tuala for the Knights. David Fositua, parallel for the Warriors. Rising Stars, Max Feagai for the Dragons. Josh Jackson, parallel for the Bulldogs. Tony Staggs, parallel for Broncos. Wildcard, Paul Vaughan for the Dragons. Dynamis Luai, parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Isaac Loom for the Storm. Brett Morris, parallel for the Roosters. 4 packets left in our third box. Startoon, Sean Johnson for the Sharks. Luke Thompson, parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Caleb Aikens for Panthers. Peter Hiku, parallel for the Warriors. Black Street Art, Moses Mbai for the Tigers. James Tedesco, parallel for the Roosters. White Streeter, Moses Mbai for the Tigers. And Anthony Don, parallel for Titans. That's another box done. Let's get these tidied up and we will get the next one. Rising Stars, Cooper Johns for the Storm. Jared Rera Hargraves, parallel for Roosters. Cody Walker, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Wildcard, Aaron Woods for the Sharks. Dragons, parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Hayes Perham for the Warriors. Blake Brayley, parallel for the Sharks. Club Heroes, Tohu Harris for the Warriors. Jake Turpin, parallel for the Broncos. Black Streeter, Jake Trbojevic for Manly. Brian Kelly, parallel for the Titans. Season to remember, Cameron Smith for the Storm. The Hammer, parallel for Cowboys. Rising Stars, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Curtis Sirenen, parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Charlie Staines for Panthers. George Williams, parallel for the Raiders. Season to remember, Young Tony Maipe for the Titans. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, parallel for the Warriors. Lachlan Fitzgibbon, parallel for the Knights. Wildcard, Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. Jesse Bromwich, parallel for Storm. Adam Reynolds, wildcard for the Rabbitohs. Ben Hunt, parallel for the Dragons. Star Tunes, Elliot Whitehead for the Raiders. Aaron Woods, parallel for the Sharks. Jake Friend, parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Herbie Farmworth for the Broncos. Adam Reynolds, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Freddie Lussick for the Roosters. Junior Paulo, parallel for the Eels. Startoons, Ashley Taylor for the Titans. James Tedesco, parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Semi Valemi for the Raiders. Damien Cook, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Mikhail Ravalawa, parallel for the Dragons. Season to remember, Micah Sivo for the Eels. Sharks parallel checklist. Manly Premiership Predictor 126. Dylan Edwards, parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Brendan Wakeham for the Bulldogs. Corey Thompson, parallel for Titans. Jordan McLean, parallel for the Cowboys. Wildcard, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Gally Cherry Evans, parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Cade Cust for Manly. Mitchell Barnett, parallel for Knights. White Streeter, Josh Mansour for Panthers. Jerome Hughes, parallel for Storm. Season to remember, Gavin Cooper for the Cowboys. Dylan Brown, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Connor Tracy for the Sharks. Stephen Crichton, parallel for Panthers. Season to remember, Martin Tapau for Manly. Alex Twal, parallel for the Tigers. Tigers parallel checklist. Team wildcard for the Rabbitohs. Jake Averillo, parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Tommy Talau for the Tigers. Patrick Carrigan, parallel for the Broncos. White Streeter, Josh Jackson for the Bulldogs. Elliot Whitehead, parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Cade Ellis for the Dragons. Raymond Fatala Mariner for the Bulldogs. Alright, last packet from the box. Season to remember, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Chanel Harris-Tavita, parallel for the Warriors. Rising Stars, Jake Averillo for the Bulldogs. Moaki Fotoaka, parallel for the Titans. Rising Stars, Tanner Boyd for the Titans. Nelson Asafa Solomona, parallel for Storm. Star Tunes, Adam Elliott for the Bulldogs. Joseph Leilua, parallel for Tigers. Black Streeter, Milwaukee Fotowaika for the Titans. Blake Ferguson, parallel for the Eels. Wildcard, Jake Trbojevic for Manly. Nathan Cleary, parallel for the Panthers. Rising Stars, Connolly Lumilu for Cowboys. Josh Alloway, parallel for Tigers. Silver Authentic, Stephen Crichton for the Panthers. Dylan Napa, parallel for the Bulldogs. Club Heroes, Keon Kolomatangi for the Rabbitohs. Scott Drinkwater, parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Reed Marnie, parallel for the Eels. Wildcard, Ryan Madison for the Eels. Apposite Coruscant, parallel for Panthers. Season to remember, Nathan Cleary for Panthers, Tommy Dearden parallel for the Broncos. Rising Stars, Ray Stone for the Eels, Joseph Tarpanay parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Hamoli Olaka-Atu for Manly. Tavita Funa, parallel for Manly. Season to remember, the Hammer for Cowboys. Knights parallel checklist. Cameron Munster, parallel for Storm. Warriors, parallel checklist. Wildcard, Alexander Brimson for the Titans. Luke Keary, parallel for the Roosters. Season to remember, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Mitchell Pearce, parallel for the Knights. Rising Stars, Tommy Starling for the Raiders. Dan Gagai, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Star Tunes, Payne Huss for the Broncos. Dale Finucane, parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Lachlan Lamb for the Roosters. Ryan Madison, parallel for the Eels. Belami Kickout, parallel for Panthers. Season to remember, Sonny Bill Williams for the Roosters. Adam Dewey, parallel for Tigers. Rising Stars, Adam Clune for the Dragons. Dallin Watine Zalesniak, parallel for the Bulldogs. Retirements, David Gower for the Eels. Tarek Sims, parallel for the Dragons. Parallel, Payne Huss for the Broncos. Wildcard, Josh Hodgson for the Raiders. Raiders parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Stephen Crichton for the Panthers. Cody Nikarima, parallel for the Warriors. White Streeter, the Hammer for Cowboys. Thankyou parallel for the Roosters. Season to remember, Mikhail Ravalawa for the Dragons. Cameron Murray parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Tessie New for the Broncos. Matt Duffy parallel for the Dragons. Season to remember, Clint Gutherson for the Eels. Sean Johnson parallel for the Sharks. Jesse Ramian parallel for the Sharks. Team wildcard for the Bulldogs. Jamal Fogarty parallel for the Titans. Rising Stars, Jackson Paulo for the Rabbitohs. Josh Maguire parallel for Cowboys. White Streeter, Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Manly parallel checklist. Alright. Box number 5 done and dusted. Box number 6. Season to remember, Sione Katoa for the Sharks. Heimel Hunt parallel for the Knights. Club Heroes, Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Josh Maguire parallel for the Cowboys. Well, rugby league training tonight for the girls is not looking good. Tanner Boyd, Rising Stars for the Titans. Dale Finucane parallel for the Storm. Ryan Madison parallel for the Eels. Wildcard, Adeli Cherry Evans for Manly. Bellamy Kickout parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Connolly Lumilu for the Cowboys. Adam Dewey parallel for the Tigers. Rising Stars, Hamoli Olika R2 for Manly. Manly parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Blake Ferguson parallel for the Eels. Black Streeter, Josh Jackson for the Bulldogs. Dallin Latin Zalesniak, parallel for the Bulldogs. Season to remember, Nick Meaney for the Bulldogs. Payne Haas, parallel for the Broncos. Rising Stars, Ray Stone for the Eels. Raiders, parallel checklist. Cody Nikarima, parallel for the Warriors. Wildcard, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Nathan Cleary, parallel for Panthers. Star Tunes, Group B. So that gets randomized between the 8 teams featured on the card. Josh Alawai, parallel for Tigers. Season to remember, David Fafita for the Broncos. Mitchell Pearce, parallel for the Knights. Nelson Asafa Solomona, parallel for Storm. Wildcard, Mawaki Fodawaika for the Titans. Takahowie, parallel for the Roosters. White Streeter, Mawaki Fodawaika for the Titans. Moses Sulai, parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Tom Starling for the Raiders. Cameron Murray, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Star Tunes, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Felice Kafusi, parallel for the Storm. Rising Stars, Lachlan Lamb for the Roosters. Micah Sivo, parallel for the Eels. Jerome Luai, parallel for Panthers. Chad Townsend, parallel for the Sharks. Season to remember, Dally Cherry Evans for Manly. Thomas McHale, parallel for the Tigers. Adam Clune, Rising Stars for the Dragons. Nick Meaney, parallel for the Bulldogs. Retirements, Gavin Cooper for the Cowboys. Matt Duffy, parallel for the Dragons. Parallel Broncos checklist. Wildcard, Chance Nico Klokstad for the Raiders. Jared Croker, parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Stephen Crichton for the Panthers. Eliza Katoa, parallel for the Warriors. White Streeter, Ben Hunt for the Dragons. Boyd Cordner, parallel for the Roosters. Season to remember, Philip Semi for the Titans. Tavita Totola, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Tessie New for the Broncos. Jordan Piera, parallel for the Dragons. Parallel, Braden Hamlin Yuli for the Sharks. Season to remember, Jared Croker for the Raiders. Jesse Ramian, parallel for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Jake Averillo for the Bulldogs. Jamal Fogarty, parallel for the Titans. Excuse me. Team Wildcard for the Raiders. Alexander Brimson, parallel for the Titans. Alright, last packet. Rising Stars, Jackson Paulo for the Rabbitohs. Cowboys, parallel checklist. Black Street Art, Ben Hunt for the Dragons. Felice Kafusi, parallel for Storm. Season to remember, Tony Staggs for the Broncos. Micah Siro, parallel for Eels. Rising Stars, Bo Fermor for the Titans. Brendan Smith, parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Jerome Luai, parallel for Panthers. Parallel, Thomas McHale for the Tigers. Wildcard, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Nick Meaney, parallel for the Bulldogs. Startoons Group A. So once again, that'll get randomised between the 8 teams featured. Heimel Hunt, parallel for the Knights. Rising Stars, Asu Kapoa for the Tigers. Broncos, parallel checklist. Retirements, Adam Blair for the Warriors. Jared Croker, parallel for the Raiders. Season to remember, David Nofaluma for the Tigers. Eliza Katoa, parallel for Warriors. Rising Stars, Nico Hines for Storm. Boyd Cordner, parallel for the Roosters. Club Heroes, Tyson Frizzell for the Dragons. David Totola, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Eels, parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Adam Pompey for the Warriors. Jordan Piera, parallel for the Dragons. Season to remember, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck for the Warriors. Braden Hamlin Yuli, parallel for the Sharks. AJ Brimson, parallel for the Titans. Rising Stars, Tex Hoy for the Knights. Cowboys, parallel checklist. Wildcard, Valentine Holmes for the Cowboys. Moses Sulai, parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, the Hammer for Cowboys. Luciano Leilua for the Tigers. White Streeter, Dylan Brown for the Eels. Bulldogs, parallel checklist. Season to remember, Josh Jackson for the Bulldogs. Xavier Coates, parallel for Broncos. Rising Stars, Oregon Kafusi for the Eels. Big Papa, parallel for Raiders. Parallel, Jazz to Vega for the Warriors. Rising Stars, Keon Kolomatangi for the Rabbitohs. Kyle Felt, parallel for the Cowboys. Team Wildcard for the Knights. Angus Crichton, parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Kai O'Donnell for the Raiders. Campbell Graham, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Parallel, Cade Cust for Manly. White Street Art, Jared Croker for the Raiders. Paul Vaughan, parallel for the Dragons. Star Tunes, Kenneth Bromwich for the Storm. Ashley Taylor, parallel for the Titans. Season to remember, Jack Whiten for the Raiders. William Kennedy, parallel for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Matt Dory for the Bulldogs. Titans, parallel checklist. Parallel, Reese Robson for the Cowboys. Season to remember, Toby Rudolph for the Sharks. Bradman Best, parallel for the Knights. 3 packets are left for box number 7. Wild card, Payne Haas for the Broncos. Brad Parker, parallel for Manly. Yes, mate, if you Google us Gold Coast trading cards, you'll find the website. Plenty of singles, boxes, everything going back to 1963. Rising Stars, Tavita Funa for Manly. David Clemmer, parallel for the Knights. Currently in the process of busting and listing rivalry with elite pre-sales, also live on the website. Wildcard, Tohu Harris for the Warriors. Isaiah Yo, parallel for Panthers. And that's the end of that box. Box number 8. Rising Stars, Tommy Talau for the Tigers. Jake Turpin, parallel for the Broncos. White Streeter, Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. George Williams, parallel for the Raiders. Season to remember, Cameron McInnes for the Dragons. Jazz Tavega, parallel for the Warriors. Parallel, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Club Heroes, Jason Tormalolo for the Cowboys. Xavier Coates, parallel for the Broncos. Season to remember, Billy Walters for Tigers. Roger Tulvasa Shek parallel for Warriors. Rising Stars, Cooper Johns for Storm. Jake Friend parallel for the Roosters. Black Streeter, Mitchell Barnett for the Knights. Adam Reynolds parallel for the Rabbitohs. Wildcard, Sean Johnson for the Sharks. Ben Hunt parallel for the Dragons. Rising Stars, Hayes Perham for the Warriors. Aaron Woods parallel for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Herbie Farmworth for the Broncos. Campbell Graham parallel for the Rabbitohs. Authentic Silver, Josh Kerr for the Dragons. Ashley Taylor parallel for the Titans. Peter Hiku, season to remember for the Warriors. Kyle Felt parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Cade Cust parallel for Manly. Wildcard, Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Paul Vaughan parallel for the Dragons. Startoons, Luke Brooks for the Tigers. William Kennedy parallel for the Sharks. Bradman Best parallel for the Knights. Wildcard, Jesse Bromwich for Storm. Brendan Smith parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Charlie Staines for Panthers. Big Papa parallel for Raiders. Rising Stars, Freddie Lussick for the Roosters. Eels parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Sammy Valemi for the Raiders. Cody Walker parallel for the Rabbitohs. Parallel Dragons checklist. Season to remember, Big Papa for the Raiders. Blake Brayley parallel for the Sharks. Retirements, James Graham for the Dragons. Isaiah Yeo parallel for Panthers. Star Tunes, Apasai Coruscant for Panthers. Jared Herrera Hargraves parallel for Roosters. Josh Morris, season to remember for the Roosters. Luciano Leilua parallel for Tigers. Rising Stars, Brendan Wakeham for the Bulldogs. Brian Kelly parallel for Titans. The Hammer parallel for Cowboys. Wildcard, Isaiah Yeo for Panthers. Curtis Sirenen parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Cade Cust for Manly. Lachlan Fitzgibbon parallel for the Knights. White Street Art, Cody Nikarima for the Warriors. Jesse Bromwich parallel for Storm. Fifth last packet in our 8th box. Season to remember, Tavita Pangai Jr. for the Broncos. Junior Paulo parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Cade Ellis for the Dragons. Bulldogs parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Connor Tracy for the Sharks. Dylan Edwards parallel for Panthers. Alex Twal parallel for Tigers. And last packet for the box. Team Wildcard for the Sharks. And Raymond Vitala Mariner parallel for the Bulldogs. Tidy these ones up. Parallel Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Parallel Micah Sivo for the Eels. Wildcard David Clemmer for the Knights. Dallin Watine Zalesniak parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars Asuka Poa for the Tigers. And Payne Haas parallel for the Broncos. Star Tunes Group B. Mitchell Pearce parallel for the Knights. And Premiership Predictor 148 for the Cowboys. Raiders parallel checklist. Season to remember, Bradman best for the Knights. Cody Nikarima parallel for the Warriors. Rising Stars Nico Hines for the Storm. Takahawi parallel for the Roosters. Wildcard Roger Tuivasa-Sheck for the Warriors. Jerome Luai parallel for Panthers. Club Heroes Nathan Cleary for Panthers. And Cameron Murray parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars Adam Pompey for the Warriors. Matt Duffy parallel for the Dragons. Season to remember, Suliasi Vornavalu for the Storm. Jesse Ramian parallel for the Sharks. Parallel Jamal Fogarty for the Titans. Rising Stars Tex Hoy for the Knights. Josh Maguire parallel for the Cowboys. Wildcard Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Manly parallel checklist. Oh, I think everything wants to go in that Storm slot today. Keep trying to put Eels in there. I put Manly in there multiple times. Rising Stars, the hammer for Cowboys. Thomas McHale parallel for the Tigers. White Street Art, Siwata Takahawi for the Roosters. It's a tongue twister before I even start that one. Nick Meaney parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Valami Kikau parallel for the Panthers. Season to remember, Charlie Staines for Panthers. Broncos parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Oregon Kafusi for the Eels. Jared Croker parallel for the Raiders. Elias Katoa parallel for the Warriors. Team wildcard for Manly. Boyd Cordner parallel for Roosters. Rising Stars, Keon Kolomatangi for the Rabbitohs. Reece Robson, parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Kai O'Donnell for the Raiders. Tavita Totola, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Parallel, Brad Parker for Manly. White Streeter, Jake Trbojevic for Manly. Jordan Piera, parallel for the Dragons. Star Tunes, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Titans, parallel checklist. Season to remember, Michael Jennings for the Eels. Braden Hamlin Yuli, parallel for the Sharks. Latrell Mitchell, parallel for the Rabbitohs. David Clemmer, parallel for the Knights. Rising Stars, Matt Dory for the Bulldogs. AJ Brimson, parallel for the Titans. Cowboys, parallel checklist. Wildcard, Corey Oates for Broncos. Moses Sulai, parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Tavita Funa for Manly. Heimel Hunt, parallel for the Knights. Rising Stars, Bo Fermor for the Titans. Felice Kafusi, parallel for Storm. Black Street Art, Cody Nikarima for the Warriors. Dale Finucane, parallel for Storm. Last packet for the box. Season to remember, Valentine Holmes for Cowboys. Ryan Madison, parallel for the Eels. Alright, 3 to go. Third last box. Let's go. Black Streeter, Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Josh Morris, parallel for the Roosters. Season to remember, Ashley Taylor for the Titans. Rabbitohs, parallel checklist. It was only a base card. Jaden Sewer, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Xavier Coates for the Broncos. Zach Lomax, parallel for Dragons. Parallel, Wade Graham for the Sharks. Wildcard, Adam Elliott for the Bulldogs. Philip Semi, parallel for the Titans. Rising Stars, Bailey Sirenen for the Rabbitohs. And parallel, Michael Morgan for the Cowboys. And our top tries, number 93, Stephen Crichton for the Panthers. Parallel, Jake Trbojevic for Manly. Star Tunes, Martin Tapau for Manly. David Fusitua, parallel for Warriors. Season to remember, Renato Mulatalo for the Sharks. Kurt Mann, parallel for the Knights. Rising Stars, Trayman Spry for the Titans. Kenny Bromwich, parallel for Storm. Club Heroes, Clint Gufferson for the Eels. Mitchell Moses, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Mitchell Dunn for the Cowboys. James Fisher-Harris, parallel for Panthers. Wildcard, Luke Brooks for the Tigers. Cameron McInnes, parallel for Dragons. Season to remember, Jake Averillo for the Bulldogs. Luke Brooks, parallel for the Tigers. Parallel, Luke Thompson for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Dylan Brown for the Eels. Herbie Farmworth, parallel for the Broncos. Wildcard, James Tedesco for the Roosters. Chance Nicole Klokstad, parallel for Raiders. White Streeter, Moses Mbai for the Tigers. Tanner Boyd, parallel for Titans. Season to remember, Cameron Smith for Storm. Jason Tomalolo, parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Bradman Best for the Knights. Tommy Turbo parallel for Manly. Daniel Saifiti parallel for the Knights. Rising Stars, Sean Blaw for the Tigers. Thomas Flegler parallel for the Broncos. Team Wildcard for the Dragons. Storm parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Pawasa for the Roosters. Regan Campbell Gillard parallel for the Eels. White Streeter, Mitchell Barnett for the Knights. Liam Martin parallel for Panthers. Season to remember, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Tommy Talau parallel for Tigers. Parallel Jack Whiten for the Raiders. Season to remember, Anari Tawala for the Knights. Tohu Harris parallel for the Warriors. Startoons, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Will Hopewade parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Max Feagai for the Dragons. Adam Elliott parallel for the Bulldogs. Corey Oates parallel for the Broncos. Rising Stars, Isaac Lumiloom for the Storm. Roosters parallel checklist. Wildcard, Zach Lomax for the Dragons. Josh Hodgson parallel for the Raiders. 2 packets left in the box. 2 boxes to go. Rising Stars, Caleb Aikens for Panthers. Ken Mormalo parallel for the Warriors. And lucky last for the box. Oh, get open. There we go. Rising Stars, Jermaine Tanua Brown for Warriors. And Sione Katoa parallel for the Sharks. White Streeter, Milwaukee Fodawaika for the Titans. Tavita Funa, parallel for Manly. Season to remember, Sione Katoa for the Sharks. Knights parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Tanner Boyd for the Titans. Cameron Munster parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Jake Averillo for the Bulldogs. Tanner Boyd parallel for the Titans. Rising Stars, Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Regan Campbell Gillard parallel for the Eels. Wildcard, Clinton Gufferson for the Eels. Liam Martin parallel for Panthers. Reed Marnie parallel for the Eels. Wildcard, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Apasai Coruscant parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Connie Loomy Loom for Cowboys. Joseph Leilua parallel for Tigers. Black Street Art, Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. Will Hopewate parallel for the Bulldogs. Star Tunes, Mikhail Ravalawa for the Dragons. Tommy Talau parallel for the Tigers. Club Heroes, Harry Grant for the Tigers. Jason Tormalolo parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Hamoli Olaka-Atu for Manly. Tommy Turbo parallel for Manly. Season to remember, Nick Meaney for the Bulldogs. Thomas Flegler parallel for the Broncos. Rising Stars, Ray Stone for the Eels. Jack Whiten parallel for the Raiders. Parallel Tohu Harris for the Warriors. Season to remember, David Fafita for the Broncos. Daniel Saifiti parallel for the Knights. Storm parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Tom Starling for the Raiders and Jaden Sewer parallel for the Rabbitohs. Star Tunes, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck for the Warriors. And Nelson Solomona, parallel for the Storm. Rising Stars, Lachlan Lamb for the Roosters. Blake Ferguson, parallel for the Eels. Parallel, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Season to remember, Daly Cherry Evans for Manly. Josh Alloway, parallel for Tigers. Rising Stars, Adam Clune for the Dragons. Dylan Napa, parallel for the Bulldogs. Retirement, Chris Lawrence for the Tigers. Cameron McInnes, parallel for the Warriors, Dragons. Tommy Dearden, parallel for the Broncos. Wildcard, Jack Whiten for the Raiders. Joseph Tarpanay, parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Stephen Crichton for Panthers. Warriors parallel checklist. White Street Art, Ben Hunt for the Dragons. Luke Keary, parallel for the Roosters. Season to remember, Philip Semi. Dane Gagai, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Tessie New for the Broncos. Tarek Sims, parallel for the Dragons. Season to remember, Jared Croker for the Raiders. Sione Katoa, parallel for the Sharks. Sean Johnson, parallel for the Sharks. Team wildcard for the Roosters. Parallel, Mikey Fodawaika for the Titans. 2 packets left. Rising Stars, Jackson Paulo for the Rabbitohs. Scott Drinkwater, parallel for the Cowboys. Brian Kelly, a wild card for the Titans. and Roosters parallel checklist. Let's pack these up back into the box. Alright, last box for the break. Let's go. Season to remember, Benji Marschall for the Tigers. Ken Marlowe parallel for the Warriors. Season to remember, Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors and Michael Morgan parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Isaac Loomy Loom for the Storm. Josh Morris parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Bailey Sirenen for the Rabbitohs. Valentine Holmes parallel for the Cowboys. Star Tunes, Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Peter Hiku parallel for the Warriors. Authentics Silver, Eliza Katoa for the Warriors. And Tanila Paseka parallel for Manly. Season to remember, Adam Reynolds for the Rabbitohs. Kalen Ponga parallel for the Knights. Rabbitohs parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Trayman Spry for the Titans. Ryan Pappenhausen parallel for Storm. Club Heroes, James Tedesco for the Roosters. Clint Gutherson parallel for the Eels. Mitchell Dunn, Rising Stars for the Cowboys. And Panthers parallel checklist. Wildcard, Luciano Alei Alua for the Tigers. And Zach Lomax parallel for the Tigers. Rising Stars, Jermaine Tanua Brown for the Warriors. Wade Graham parallel for the Sharks. Season to remember, Josh Mansour for Panthers. David Nofaluma, parallel for Tigers. Josh Jackson, Bulldogs, parallel. Rising Stars, Dylan Brown for the Eels. Tony Staggs, parallel for the Broncos. Wildcard, Boyd Cordner for the Roosters. Janama Sluai, parallel for the Raiders. White Streetart, Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Philip Semi, parallel for the Titans. Team Wildcard for the Panthers. Kenny Bromwich, parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Pawasa for the Roosters. Mitchell Moses, parallel for the Eels. White Streetart, Renato Molitalo for the Sharks. Parallel, James Fisher-Harris for Panthers. Season to remember, Mitchell Orbison for the Roosters. Luke Brooks, parallel for the Tigers. Rising Stars, Max Feagai for the Dragons. Luke Thompson, parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Sean Bloor for the Tigers. Corey Oates, parallel for Broncos. Herbie Farnworth in the parallels for Broncos. Wildcard, Ben Hunt for the Dragons. Chance Nicole Klokstad, parallel for the Raiders. Star Tunes, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Adam Elliott, parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Caleb Aikens for the Panthers. David Fussy Tua, parallel for the Warriors. Kurt Mann, parallel for the Knights. Parallel, Josh Hodgson for the Raiders. Black Streeter, Thankyou for the Roosters. Brett Morris, parallel for the Roosters. 5th last packet for the box. Get open. Season to remember, Cody Ramsey for the Dragons. Latrell Mitchell, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Xavier Coates for the Broncos. Adam Clune, parallel for the Dragons. Rising Stars, Bradman Best for the Knights. Jake Trbojevic, parallel for Manly. Parallel, Chad Townsend for the Sharks. Last, hopefully not least, here we go. Wildcard, Will Hopewate for the Bulldogs and Anthony Don, parallel for Titans. Alright guys, all we have left to do now is to randomise our 3 Star Tunes cards. We are going to start with the Group A, and then we'll do both of these individually. Alright, so let's flick over our screen. There we go. Alright, number 1, number 2, and lucky. Oh, we'll go with the top of the 8. There we go. Knights, Nicholas Verwey. Congratulations. That's for our Group A. Let's reset that randomizer. And there we go. Alright, 3 times round the merry-go-round for our first Group B Star Tunes. There's 1, there's 2, and there is 3. Nicholas Verwey with the Tigers this time. And one more time for our last, oops, pressed the wrong button. There we go. Alright, last one, number 1, number 2, and lucky last, number 3. Cowboys, William Goodger. Alright guys, that is it. That is all for this break. We will be live again tomorrow with break 365.